welcome back. An increase of over 40% on the total turnover for AFEX Commodity Exchange for the week ended the 16th of January 2023. We have Eniola Akindele, analyst, market data and research with AFEX, joining us from our Abuja studio to give us details of trading on AFEX and the AFEX Exchange for that week ended. Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for your time, Eniola.
Good morning. It's nice to be here.
So let's have details of the trading for the weekend at the 16th of January.
Okay, thank you. For our last trading week, we saw a mixed performance across our key indicators. Our total turnover increased by 41% to close out at 3.7 billion naira. Our volumes traded was doubled to close out at 11.9 million. However, our number of deals declined by 24% to close out at 239 contracts. Across our key indicators, our commodity index, however, increased by 0.11% to close out at 476 basis points. However, our export index declined marginally by 0.41% to close out at 244 basis points. For the volumes traded on our exchange, we saw that maize and soybean account for over 75% of the total volumes traded. Across our commodity prices, soybean was the only gainer, gaining 3.20% to close out at 325 naira. Paddy rice declined by 1.08% to close out at 307 naira per kilogram. Also, cocoa declined by 1.88% to close out at 1,864 naira per kg. Maize declined by 2% to close out at 214 naira per kg. Also, sorghum declined by 2.5% to close out at 284 naira per kg. And also, cashew declined by 3.18% to close out at 453 naira per kg, while the prices of our other commodity remain constant. To know more about us, kindly visit our website www.africanexchange.com, and to trade on our platform, kindly download our app ComX on Google Play Store and iOS Store.
All right, thank you so much, Eniola Akindele, analyst with market data and research with AFEX. Thank you for those details. I'll still stay with AFEX now. Let's look at food system trends and 2023 annual outlook. Joining us from our Abuja studio also is David Ibidapo, head market data and research with AFEX. Good morning, Mr. Ibidapo. Well, we do know that food security is one of a series of interconnected challenges, from the cost of living to energy crisis. Macroeconomic conditions are expected to remain poor, and that's because of the continued underperformance in agricultural sector. Let's look into 2023 now, especially in Nigeria, with the elections expected to present significant challenges with little change in trajectory of a nationwide insecurity. Mr. Ibidapo, the AFEX crop production report forecasts a generally low production level across commodities. What are the factors that have informed this?
Good morning, Ini. Thanks for having me today. Just like you said, some months back, we forecasted some level of decline in production levels across key commodities, and I would say key staples, right, like maize, paddy rice, and sorghum, averaging around 11% in terms of decline that we expect, right? So one of the major factors that actually drove this expectation are actually issues around the hike in fertilizer prices, which kind of induced some level of low fertilizer consumption across farmers. Then also we saw the climatic shock. We saw climate shock, right, where we saw the effect of flooding on a lot of farms, wiping out about 600,000 hectares, right, across like 30 states. And this was actually a big issue. And one of the major things we warned against is the fact that this can kind of induce some level of crisis, food crisis, right, coming into 2023, right? And if we look at this, you see that it's a big and major factor to consider when you look at the effect on average households, right? Because the big factor throughout last year and even this year as we are looking is inflation, and we all understand what high prices of commodities mean, or high price levels mean for the purchasing power of consumers, right? So it's actually a very big issue. I would think, though we saw inflation level kind of moderate a bit in the last NBS report, but we all understand that this is more of a base effect, right, than the actual reality, right? So we think on the back of the supply crunch that we may actually see this year, there will be some level of effect on household income levels, and this we believe is actually key, and we have to really look at it this year.
Yeah, so you mentioned some of those challenges. Flooding is one of it. Post-harvest loss is also a big one for Nigeria. Are there some solution, that's, even if it's in 2023, especially the issue of flooding, because the season is coming again, and we know the devastation that farmers, especially rice, faced in 2022. Are there things that can be done to curtail or manage the situation better?
Yeah, Ine. So we believe that to a very large extent, right, it all boils down to the level of investments that we make in the agricultural space, right? Are we intentional about controlling of putting some level of buffers around some of these shocks that we've actually seen, which may also happen this year, right? Based on some forecast by some international bodies, right? So are we intentional, right? Because in controlling controlling climate shock, right, we will start talking about investment in building some drought-resistant seeds, right? We are talking about also technology like greenhouse solutions, right, which can also like help to kind of ameliorate the effect of climate change, right? And also when you talk about post-harvest losses, right, we are talking about investment infrastructures around storage facilities, right? We've not really seen a lot of much efforts in this line in the agricultural space, but at AFEX, one of the things we've ensured doing is to continuously and consistently ensure we provide that storage solution to control for post-harvest losses, right? Currently, we have over 134 warehouses across 28 states, right? And we understand that this is actually very important to kind of fix some of the challenges that are faced by farmers, because when farmers plant and they produce, the question is, do they have where to store these commodities, right? And that's why the risk of post-harvest loss in Nigeria is actually very high. And if you look at our absorption capacity in Nigeria as a whole, right, we are talking about the ability to absorb just 5 to 7% of what is produced annually, right? That's very, very abysmal. That's really very small. So we need to be intentional about investment in the agricultural space.
Mm. And the war has been going on. It's going to be a year in, I think, a couple of weeks, the war going on in Ukraine. And we know that these are major producers of some agricultural wheat, fertilizer, and all of that. And we have felt the impact. Have we been able to cover up with that shortage of supply from Ukraine and Russia?
Truth be told, right, the Russia-Ukraine war really poses a major challenge this year also, right, because we've not seen the war kind of temper in a bit, right? Now, if this war continues to intensify, there is a major threat, right? Because the truth of the matter is we still largely depend on fertilizer imports, especially the components, because most of our farmers use more of NPKs, right? So, and what we typically do in the country is more of blending rather than producing, right? Now, so we think, and we also understand, we saw the pass-through also in wheat as a commodity, because Nigeria currently produces just 1% of what we consume in terms of wheat, right? So and these countries are actually big producers of these commodities.
Now, the truth of the matter is it will take time, right, to start building some level of some level of buffer, right, because we need to be intentional about reducing our resilience on the international space in terms of having to get input and also import some of these commodities that we really need or use in the domestic space, right? And it all boils down into how do we support production levels, especially for wheat as a commodity, right? How do we start thinking around producing our own fertilizer, or even start thinking of alternative sources for procuring these fertilizers into the country? Because if the price of fertilizer continues to increase on the back of this war, right, we may see a reduction in consumption level of fertilizer, which also finally affect output levels this year.
All right, just very briefly now, what other factors do you see affecting commodities market this year? Maybe just list them because we're out of time.
Okay, yeah, I think the biggest factor is the fact that the global economy is actually slowing down. But however, there's some risk to this because normally when the global economy is slowing down, we're saying demand levels can be slow and kind of affect commodity prices that's commodity prices declining, right? But the risk to this is also the fact that the Russia-Ukraine crisis is still ongoing, which will still further affect supply, which will further disrupt supply levels. We still have the El Nino effect, right, which is forecasted to continue for a third consecutive year, right? Some international bodies in the US have forecasted that in the African region we will see a lot of drought, right? And why in Australia and Asia region high rainfall, right, which could lead to flooding. Right. And we also think, very importantly, right, the outcome of this election would also pose some level of outlook for the agricultural space, because the past administration were able to focus a lot on agriculture. So the question is, will the next administration actually focus on agriculture? What will be the effect of all of these?
All right, David,
I think more of these would actually be spoken about in our launch, in the report's launch.
All right, we'll be looking forward to that report from AFEX to give us more of those factors. Thank you so much, David Widako, Head Market Data and Research with AFEX.
Thank you, Eunice. Nice to be here.
Let's take a breather. We'll be back for the markets.